Hi, everyone. I'm Stephen W. Long. This is The Writing Life. And I was thinking, sort of in preparation for the show today, how rewarding it is, how fun it is to come across somebody that you know is going to blossom, that is going to be a big success. And now I have the opportunity to watch that happen. So before we get too deep in the woods here, Josh Rice, welcome to The Writing Life. And before I get into any of that, you volunteered for the Terroir Creative Writing Festival to help. And I just wanted to acknowledge that and thank you for that, because I think it's really worthwhile, but it doesn't happen without people stepping up. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for your kind words.
Okay, so I'm gonna, this is gonna, it's gonna sound impertinent. It's not meant to be, so bear with me. And the question is, why do you write? And the reason that I ask that is, at the last Terroir, Omar Al-Akkad asked people that. Why do you write? And then he followed that up with, writing is hard. So I put it to you, why do you write?
Why do I write is, I think for me, it's something that I've always done, first of all.
Okay.
It's something that really since the time of just my early adolescence, probably before, like I remember writing stories like as a 7 or 8 year old. I've always kind of been drawn to like a fantastical medium in that way.
Okay.
And just kind of, imagining what it would be like to be like a chivalrous knight in shining armor,
sure.
Wandering through the countryside. So it's always been a part of me in that way. And actually, we talked about this a little bit before the show, but I have a history as an actor, and that's what I went to school for. And so my writing transitioned more onto the stage, and that became sort of my expressive medium of artistry. And then it's kind of circled back around to writing now at this point in my life. And I think a big part of it for me is just, I think it's so valuable and so important, for lack of a better word right now, to have a really deep relationship to self and connection to self.
Okay.
And for me, writing is a big part
Because
of that.
that's where you build from.
You build from, at the end of the day, that's all we really have,
sure.
is our relationship to ourselves and ourselves in this life,
Yeah.
And so it's important, for me at least, to develop that sort of deep connection.
I want to get into that more later, but that's such a segue, because you had sent me a little bit of your work, and if it's all right, I want to read just a paragraph. And the title of this is Age of Sisyphus. And so people would maybe connect that with rolling the rock up the hill. Is that
right, yes.
What an image that is. But so this is from your prologue. Throughout much of my youth, I was plagued by the same implacable fear that no matter how hard I strove for what I wanted, that it would amount to nothing. And I would end up back where I started, having accomplished no more than wasting time with nothing to show for it. So I read that and I thought a couple of things. On the one hand, it's pretty dark, and I think it was probably honest on your part. So number one, I hope it's better now. But the other thing is, as a sort of a literary device, what a foundation to build a narrative arc. In other words, you can't get better if you started better to begin with.
Right.
So was that conscious? Are you just being honest and saying, man, this is where I'm at, or this is where I was at?
It is conscious.
Yeah.
Because I think for me, as part of that chapter that I'd sent you, I think there was a point in there that gave voice to this, which is that I think it's. I just lost my train of thought.
Which we were talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Your lines.
Yeah. I just think that it's really easy to, just as what I was going to give a voice to, is that I think I've always been kind of a dreamer, And so dreaming about all these different goals or these
Yeah.
different lives that I could live.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important part of being human. But the other sort of part that at least is really important in the world that we all inhabit today is like picking something and working really hard at it, you know? And so I think for me, that was a piece that I sort of intellectually knew, but I didn't actually understand kind of in my bones.
Okay.
Or and so that's kind of what that imagery is giving voice to,
Yeah.
which is that I think for a lot of my life up until my mid to late 20s,
Yeah.
it was dreaming about all the things that I wanted to accomplish and wanted to do, but not really going for it. And so
Okay.
before, you know, because there's the idea of pushing that stone up the hill,
Yeah.
and there's this idea of kind of getting to the top of the hill and seeing what's on the other side, or seeing that beautiful vista from the peak. And I never really felt like I would get like glimpses or snippets of
Yeah.
what that view may look like, but I never really sort of reached there. And maybe that's selling myself short, but that was the feeling that I
Well, I was
had for a
wondering,
while.
selling yourself short. I wonder, man, this is pretty psychological. But you talk about dreaming,
Mm-hmm.
which I maybe would use the word vision or envision.
Totally.
You know, to see that. And I think people for themselves set different strata. And I have to say, I have a friend who's been very successful, but when you talk to him, he says his goal in life was to be nearly adequate, and which he's far surpassed that. I think
Yeah.
it was sort of tongue in cheek. But so Sisyphus and the vision, the dreaming, it sounds to me like you set goals that at best would be difficult to accomplish. And maybe that's how, when you strive, that it keeps you going. That's the Sisyphus thing. That, you know, you check the box, but there's more. Maybe that's it.
Yeah, I think, well, and the second part of the Sisyphus piece is that I think you're absolutely right, is that I definitely would set myself very lofty and at times intangible goals. But I kind of reached a point in my life where I realized that if I really wanted to accomplish anything that I would really be happy with or proud of,
Right.
or actually move towards the lofty goals that I had really truly set for myself,
Right.
it would be coming from a place of being strong in self. And so when I imagined what that might look like for me,
Yeah.
at least as a first step, it was travel.
Right.
And kind of creating some time and space and distance from the path that I'd been on to the path that I maybe wanted to move toward,
Yeah.
or return to. I mean, I'm not.
But evaluate. So get away so you can evaluate.
Yeah, I think it's really important to hit the pause button at times,
Right.
and just breathe a little bit. You know.
Sure, sure.
We're kind of. I think it's easy to get in a little bit of a rat race.
Of course.
You know, and so I think for me I had these dreams of spending an entire year in Europe.
Right.
That didn't really happen because of the pandemic
Right.
a couple years ago. But I did, rather than a year, I did about 6 months of travel. And
Yeah.
yeah,
And I was thinking, oh my gosh, I think there's no substitute for, there's no better approach to education than travel.
yes,
And I think when you travel, one of the things is you knock down the entrance to prejudice. So I think it's probably human nature to think whatever you have, your community, your religion, your family, culture, whatever it is the best. But you think that when you don't know there's something else. And when you travel and are exposed to those things, then you say, oh, you know, ours is pretty good, but that's pretty good too.
yeah,
Yeah.
It broadens your horizons.
Yeah.
And I think for me, what I really found during my time, as I was giving, you know, every second of the day to my travels, was that we really have so much more in common than we really ever give ourselves credit for.
Right.
And that was just apparent just from traveling around the national parks as I did, or
Right.
traveling in Europe. You know, there's I think there's that inherent humanity in all of us
Right.
that just is kind of easy to lose sight of when we're all
Yeah.
siloed in our own little worlds.
And it's the flip side of what I just said.
Right.
So people other places can be different and certainly just as good, or maybe they have a better take on something. And at the same time, they're people. You know, they want what we want. I mean, universally,
Yeah.
safety, some comfort. Yeah.
Sense of happiness and
Yeah.
fulfillment, some
Yeah, sure.
purpose. Yeah.
Now, am I right? Did you do the Camino, or that was on the list, but you didn't get there yet?
It was both. So it was on my year-long sort of vision for being in Europe.
Right.
I didn't get to do that in 2020, but I did do it in the summer of 2022.
Okay.
And so I was in Europe for about 3 months,
Okay.
and about 6 weeks of that was the Camino, and
Okay.
I walked 1,000 kilometers, and
Yeah.
it's one of the best things
Yeah.
I've ever done.
And so was it the French route?
It was the French route.
Yeah.
So starting in Saint-Jean, right there at the border of
Right.
France and Spain, and
Right.
out to Santiago along the French route, and then I elected to do the route out to Finisterre
Yeah.
and Muscia, and then I actually walked back. So if you kind of calculate all of that, that's
Right.
almost an even 1,000 kilometers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That could be its own show.
It really could.
Yeah. So I had a writing teacher one time who said, being a writer gives you a license to snoop. And that's a cute way to say it, but I think what it means is to be observant. And that's a great example. There are sights and sounds and personalities and smells and that I don't know. Maybe you took notes. I didn't when I did that, but you did take it inside. And so then in your writing, I suspect that it could come out at some point.
Yeah.
Even if you're not writing about that thing, maybe you saw somebody, or maybe maybe you felt a certain way.
Absolutely. I mean, there's certain tones and feelings that I will take with me forevermore, I think.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting that you bring that up, because I think you're kind of talking about like a process in terms of traveloguing.
Sure.
And I still don't really know what my process is there. When I did because I also did a tour around the national parks here in
Right.
the West, in the United States, and so that was about a 3-month excursion tour, about 10,000 miles in a big loop, and I was doing voice journals like multiple times a day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just to like kind of record my thoughts and feelings and everything, and then I basically ended up with like, I don't know, it was something like 24 straight hours worth of like voice journals, which is just a lot to kind of go through.
Sure.
Like at the back end. So when I did the Camino, I didn't record anything.
Yeah.
But when I think about it, I get these very clear visions and vignettes and snippets
Right.
of either like walking through an incredible valley just through this countryside with
Right.
among wheat fields, and it just feels very sort of almost mythical, just seeing like these mountain ranges up to the north, and you're going through this
Right.
field of wheat.
Well, and some of the architecture too.
And the architecture
Yeah.
as well. There's just so much history and beauty there. So a lot of that just lives very strongly within me.
Yeah.
And then there's all the people that I met too. I mean, it was,
Right.
they talk about your Camino family.
Right.
And I certainly found mine and more
Yeah,
while
yeah.
I was out there. So, I think just maybe to bring it back to your question from about 5 to 10 minutes ago with Sisyphus, I think for me, that's where I kind of left that imagery behind, was when I actually was able to go out and experience my travels and
That's-
feel like I actually
yeah.
did something that I had like set a course for,
Yeah.
and I saw it through all the way to the end.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of where that was that starting point of feeling very Sisyphean to then moving beyond that.
Yeah, that's, I mean, it's satisfying to set a goal and achieve the goal,
Yes.
and you did that. but I think maybe there was even more benefit because you did have the break in time and maybe some introspection.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, did you walk alone?
I did.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I
You
set
went
out
alone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I went alone, and I would say it was more of a solo experience through the national parks.
Oh.
Because you meet people, you know, as you're walking around, going on
Right.
hikes or so on and so forth. But most of my time was spent alone.
Okay.
Whereas I think with the Camino, every day is different. You know, some
Right.
days you want to just spend in solitude or just have time for yourself and with yourself. Other days it's spent just with an entire community of people.
Right.
And that's one of the beautiful pieces of the
Sure.
Camino is that the right Camino is the right one for you. You
Right,
know? And so, so that can be different every day.
Did you stay in the albergues?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, we did that, and for two reasons. One is it's less expensive, but the other thing is I wanted that communal experience.
Absolutely.
And it's been a couple of years now since I went. When did you go? What year?
It was the summer of 2022.
Okay,
So,
I went in the fall of 2022.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So we were kind of just.
I thought I saw you.
Yeah, right.
No, I was
You look
going to
very
say.
familiar.
Yeah, that year, and I don't know that this is abnormal. I think it was probably high because of the pandemic. People couldn't go, and then you could. But I think I think by October or November, 300,000 people
Wow.
had gotten their their
certificate.
certificate. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's been growing in popularity just almost every year.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I feel like maybe every pilgrim feels this way, but I felt like I went right at the perfect time.
Yeah.
You know, because it was like middle of May until end of June.
Okay.
And so it was right there as like spring was turning into summer and
Yeah.
still cool. Some, you know.
Well, I was going to say that there are places that in the winter you can actually encounter snow. It's
Right.
pretty tough. And then in the summer, man, it would be so hot.
Yeah.
So we went in the fall. You went kind of the opposite of that.
Yeah.
But
You went with someone?
a quick story. Yeah. So I went with two brothers. My favorite part of this is I wanted to go, and I was not yet retired, but my younger brother, the rat, was. And I was talking to him on the phone one day and one morning, and I said, "Would you consider hiking the Camino with me?" And he said, "Yeah." What is it? But that's just his mindset was he was up for anything.
Yeah.
So anyway, we went and made it to Finisterre, but now you walked even farther because we took a bus back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I don't know if you went up to Musha at all.
No.
Okay, so there's Finisterre, like there's this little peninsula, for those that don't know, out at the coast, and you can take a trail down to Finisterre, which is in the south.
Right.
And then Musha's the exact opposite on the north side of the peninsula.
Oh, okay.
It's about 25, 30 kilometers up there.
Okay.
And then you can walk back. And it was an experience walking back because one of the beautiful things about the Camino is there's all these signs and yellow arrows
Sure.
pointing you across Spain. Well, it's really easy to miss those on the way back because they're not necessarily pointing you
They
back
don't
towards-
think you're going that way.
Yeah, they think that you're probably going to take a bus.
Right. Right.
It's probably smarter to.
Yeah.
So there was a moment where just quick anecdote, there was a moment where I missed one of those markers.
Oh yeah.
And I was walking along a pathway, and thankfully I had technology with me, so I could I think I don't see any other pilgrims. I think I'm
Right.
off the pathway. So I could see I was walking parallel to it, but I was walking through just a different back road.
Oh,
And that took me through some people's farms.
sure.
And I walk around a corner, and this massive, like 120-pound German Shepherd just like comes pretty much straight up to me, and I stop dead, and he just like pretty much stands or sits in front of me and just
Yeah.
starts like a slow growl. And like I'm like, if this dog pounces, I'm done.
Right. Right.
And he just like makes sure that I stopped, and then he does a very slow circle
Really?
around me.
Yeah.
looks at me again, and then like goes and sits in front of the chickens and just like growls until I walk around the corner and out of sight. And yeah, anyway, that's really stuck with me.
Yeah, can imagine trying to come up with the words in Spanish, good boy.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't have that in my back pocket.
Josh, I don't want to run out of time.
Yeah, please, sorry.
Yeah, no, but I want to talk about your acting for two things. What you sent me is nonfiction, and that may be with your travel and with the national parks, maybe your focus is nonfiction, but learning a character, becoming a character, you talked about dreaming, we talked about vision. I would think that the development, even if you're given a script, you bring something to that. You really have to develop that character, which is what a fiction writer does, and to make this world, this fake world, believable. Can you comment on maybe the similarity, or maybe you don't see it, maybe it's different?
Oh, I absolutely see the similarities.
Okay.
Yeah, it's funny that I've been choosing to work a little bit more on nonfiction and memoir, just because I think it's that, you know, acting and fiction writing pair so seamlessly together in many ways. And I've kind of been coming to that realization recently of like, maybe I can simultaneously work them both, both at the same time.
Yeah.
Because as an actor, when you're approaching a character, you're having to think about like objectives, wants, desires, dreams, backstory, you know, all those things, and how that interplays and works within each individual scene. And not only that, but how that builds in a character arc from the start of a story to the finish.
Right.
So you start somewhere and then you finish in a different place.
Yeah.
And so it absolutely pairs together in that way. And it's a very nice skill to have kind of in my back pocket, because I've actually, like this past week, I've been writing like a little short film for a friend of mine.
Oh, good.
And but that's pretty much where I start. It's like, okay, like this scene has two characters. What does this one want? What does this one want? And where are we starting and where are we wanting to end? And how does that fit into the
Well, I was going to ask you if there was a parallel here, and really you just said it. In one of my writing classes, the teacher said, in every scene, the point of view character needs to want something. And the reader doesn't have to know what that is, but you, the author, better know.
Absolutely.
And that's sort of what drives them. And I think it keeps them consistent as well.
Absolutely. And so we're kind of talking about wants and objectives.
Yeah.
Objectives kind of an acting term. Then there's super objectives as well, which is kind of like, what is the character wanting, like where are they wanting to end up at the end of the story?
Right.
You know, and so because if you base your writing in wants, desires, and it's an active action, and what that does to your scene, in my opinion, is that it actually creates like liveliness and actual action within the scene. Otherwise, it's just, you know.
Well, and I think there's depth or believability or something.
Yeah.
I mean, you can say the words and hit your mark, but that's not the same.
No, you have to. There's a certain embodiment that is necessary in a story that you're telling. Otherwise, it's, you know, we don't necessarily write about the everyday things that we do, like eating breakfast or having lunch or whatever it is, you know, unless something is actively happening for us in that moment.
Right.
Of, okay, like I have an epiphany as I'm eating breakfast, you know, then that's a moment that you can build upon.
My teacher called that the telling detail. So, you know, if you have cornflakes, there better be more.
Right.
Are they significant? Is it a filler? Is it you're just taking up space here, or is there a reason for doing what you're doing? And the other thing she said, and again, I think maybe this applies to building character and acting, is that particularly in a mystery, the end should be a surprise, and in hindsight, inevitable.
Yes.
So.
Say that again.
So the ending, when you get to the end of a mystery, but really a story, it should be a surprise, but in hindsight, it's inevitable.
Yes.
So in other words, you don't feel cheated. You
Yes.
don't feel like well, that doesn't make sense. He didn't care about Susie.
Right.
You know, why are they together now? But along the way, maybe there is some indication that he did like Susie
Absolutely.
somehow.
Well, our readers are very intelligent and very
Sure,
smart, so
sure.
I think you don't, from my understanding, you don't have to spell everything out for your readers. In fact, you shouldn't.
You shouldn't.
But you should give them like the stepping stones to
Right.
get, as you're saying, to
Right.
the end of the story, and they can feel satisfied.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Now, I'm not putting words in your mouth. I don't mean to. But do you want to get back to acting? Or you don't know yet?
I don't know yet.
Yeah. okay.
Yeah, I don't know yet. I think it's something that I'll always have like sort of a fan's interest in at minimum.
Okay, sure.
And it was something that like, it was just such just a large part of my 20s that's all I was doing, all I was focusing on.
Was the acting.
Was the acting. And it was like every choice that I made in my life was based around
Sure.
being an actor. And so I think for me, I'm still maybe enjoying some time and distance away from
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And then seeing where it leads me. You know, I think it's still important for me to have a creative outlet and to...
And again, to bring that back to writing, I think they're so similar.
yeah, exactly.
And I think about people, this may be applicable, somebody like Ron Howard, who we know as an actor, but in fact now, it seems to me that the people who sort of grow up in that industry like the transition to behind the scenes. And maybe writing is, in a sense, behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a larger point that you just touched on, which I think as an actor, you are the cherry on top. Like, you have very minimal creative control
Right.
beyond like the choices that you make
Right.
within your character. Whereas if you're behind the scenes,
Yeah.
either writing, directing, producing,
Right.
you are making creative choices that affect the whole product. Right?
Yeah.
So there's just more sort of ownership, I think, in those other roles than maybe as an actor.
I don't know, I've not done any of those, but it seems like something else would be more satisfying. So the something else being the writer, or the something else being the director. And I think I came to that late in life because, what do I know? You know, you watch a movie, all I know is the actor.
Right.
Gee, that's cool. And then, but you learn more about it, and you start to think, well, they didn't make up those words.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, they learned them,
Yeah.
and then they embodied them.
right.
Yeah, and acting can be very satisfying and very fulfilling for a lot
I'm
of people.
sure.
I think what I discovered for myself is that there's a lot more to life than just acting.
Right.
And so I think that if I do find myself back in front of a screen or on a stage as an actor, it will be because I'm making that active choice,
Right.
because I'm really satisfied in all the other areas of my life.
And I was going to say, and they're not mutually exclusive.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, you can do both.
Yeah.
Okay. Folks, we're going to wrap it up there. It seems appropriate, but we're going to see more of this fella. And just thank you again for participating with Terroir.
Oh, absolutely.
And I look forward to what you're going to do on your own, and that we all get to enjoy.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Folks, that's it for this time. We'll see you next time on The Writing Life.